276 teenagers taken by terrorists, and now nearly 100 are on their way home. We'll explore the fate of the Chibok schoolgirls in Nigeria's battle with Boko Haram. I'm Dana Lewis, and this is Insight. Welcome to Insight. Just over 3 years ago, 276 teenagers were bundled into trucks in the middle of the night and abducted by terrorists in northeastern Nigeria. The kidnapping of the Chibok schoolgirls by Boko Haram militants shocked the world and sparked a global campaign supported by, among others, the former U.S. First Lady Michelle Obama. Earlier this month, 82 of the girls were released, exchanged for suspected terrorists being held by the government. Now, pressure remains on the authorities, with more than 100 young women still unaccounted for, their number among thousands of people abducted by Boko Haram. Insight's Juliana Olienka reports.
In the remote town of Chibok, 600 miles north from the capital Abuja, this family has been waiting 3 years to hear news about the condition of their daughter. Sarah Yaga was one of the 276 teenagers kidnapped by the terror group Boko Haram from her school in April 2014. Her family have not seen or heard from her since. Her mother and father, Samuel and Rebecca, were hopeful that their daughter may have been among the group of 82 women that were recently released from the jungle. Sadly, this wasn't the case.
Feeling bad, but I'm keeping praying, because even I cry, I will not go and bring her by my strength or power. But I believe in God, and I trust God that one day they will release, and see it now. They begin the coming out now. I know that one day they will soon all come.
Like the families of the other 113 young women still unaccounted for, Samuel and Rebecca can only wait in hope that one day they will all be reunited. Captured as children, those that have been released from the hands of Boko Haram are now young women. Many were forced to marry and bear children during their 3 years of captivity. Nobody can comprehend the level of trauma that these women have been through. Recently, the Nigerian government has been criticized for its handling of the former captives. The 21 women released in October last year are yet to return to their families 8 months later. They have been kept in a government rehabilitation center with very little contact with their families. Many are dubbing the government care government custody.
It's very difficult actually to know exactly what government's plan is, because government is treating them like a trophy or something, like, and treating the whole issue with secrecy, and which is not good at all.
Nigerian leaders have been quick to defend the rehabilitation process.
So the next step is, after they are declared medically fit, they come back to us. Then they go through the rehabilitation and reintegration program. While they are with us during the program, their parents are free to come to see them anytime. And if any of the girls wants to go home and come back, like one is on break now for 2 weeks. She indicated that she wanted to go home for 2 weeks. So she's home. She'll spend 2 weeks and then come back. So they are freely staying there. Nobody's compelling them to be there.
Psychologists working closely with those previously released said family therapy rather than isolation would be a better way of reintegrating them back into society. Some reports suggest that there is a fear that once reunited with their families, these young women may be targeted for further kidnappings, or, like many before them, face being ostracized by their communities when they return home.
No one knows, the kind of indoctrination they went through, the kind of maltreatment they went through. So if you use the name of security and you keep them in maybe in a facility, government facility in Abuja, where they can't go out, they can't talk to their parents, they can't see their friends, I think that is not good for their rehabilitation. I think it will be for them as if they are jumping from frying pan to fire.
For now, those recently released will still have to contemplate a life away from home. Another reminder that the impact of the terror group's reign will remain for a generation. Juliana Olainka, reporting for Insight.
All right, I'm joined now by Ini Deli Adidaji, who is a graduate teaching assistant whose research specializes in Boko Haram from the School of Oriental and African Studies. And I have to say, I'm just taking a deep breath watching the video of those young women because there are no smiles there. You would think that the release of hostages is not joyous, but certainly that they would be relieved. You don't seem to see it on their faces. What does that say?
I think it's quite understandable because when you think about the fact that those girls schooled together, even though some of them are free now, they must still be thinking about their friends, their former classmates who are still in the custody of Boko Haram.
It's just complete anguish seeing those people taken for that long, 3 years.
Indeed, indeed.
And yet they were very quiet because you didn't hear a lot from the parents. Why is that?
I suspect it's a combination of factors. On the one hand, the entire process leading up to the release of the girls, the ones who have been released so far, has been shrouded in secrecy. The Nigerian government's been quite hush-hush about negotiations, about the rapprochement with the Boko Haram sect. Also,
which is not altogether unusual when these hostage takings are going on. Even in American press, they're asked not to speak out, not to endanger negotiations. But this one seems to be the Nigerian government simply didn't want to discuss it at some points.
It does appear that way, and I'm thinking primarily about the parents of the abducted girls, and to not know, first of all, the fate of their children, and to have a government that appears to not be very expressive or communicative about what it was doing or what it is doing, can also put them in that sort of state where they have nothing to say at all, because they are as much in the dark as other members of the Nigerian public are. 276
taken in 2014, 21 released in October, another 82 3 weeks ago, 113 still missing. Why on earth are those girls, young women now, because they were taken, when some of them were 17, 18, and they're in their 20s, why are they still being held? What is going on? Held by the government.
When you say held by the government, I believe you're referring to the ones who have been released so far. I think it all comes back to what we were discussing a few seconds earlier about the Nigerian government not being very well skilled in communicating its strategies or rationales to members of the Nigerian public.
Is held a bad characterization? They're in an indoctrination center. The families have hardly been able to get in to see them. If they could be released tomorrow, those girls would be walking out that door to be back with their families.
That's the belief that many Nigerians hold, but ostensibly we've been made to believe that they're being kept away from their families and the members of the public right now by the government.
I'm sorry, it's a rehab center,
yes.
And I use the word indoctrination. They are fears by the Nigerian government that some of them have been indoctrinated by Boko Haram.
Indeed, yes. And so apparently the government needs to make an accurate assessment of the current mental state and well-being of the girls before they deemed them safe to be released into the public. Yes.
What's your opinion? Surely the best place for them is to go home and be returned to their families and get back to some sort of normal life and some kind of loving environment, not being held at a government center.
I'm
putting you on the spot, but
I'm ambivalent. I'm ambivalent about it. Of course, I imagine the girls must be dying, for lack of a better word, to return to their homes and to be reunited with their parents and with their siblings, their kith and kin. But on the other hand, I'm also quite cautious in that these girls have been in the custody of Boko Haram for years.
For 3 years. Some of them were married to their hostage takers and had children.
Apparently, yes. And so the amount of trauma that they must have been through, and the toll it must have taken on their mental health cannot be cannot be easily dismissed. And so I think they need to be given appropriate care at the moment before they can then be released and sent home.
All right, prisoner swap. This was a deal with Boko Haram.
That's what people are saying.
How is that playing in Nigeria? I mean, do people feel that that was a good thing to do, or what message does that send to anybody that's considering taking hostages? It's a deal that a lot of people would say shouldn't have been made.
But, I totally understand that particular school of thought, but then others would also point out that even the Americans did negotiate with terrorists, even though officially the American government
in a very few instances. Just very quickly before I let you go, we focused on the girls for good reason.
Yes.
I mean, it was a high-profile, very tragic case from young women taken from a school. But there are thousands and thousands of others that have been kidnapped. We never even hear about those cases.
True. And it's something people myself included, have said over the years, that it took the abduction of the Chibok girls for the spate of abductions within northeastern Nigeria by Boko Haram to become, it took the abduction of the Chibok girls for that, practice by Boko Haram to become an issue. Boko Haram has been abducting girls, women, boys, men, all over from different parts.
That we never heard of.
No. The government's not spoken very much about it.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your insight about this. 113 still missing, and those other girls still being held in a government center. Let's hope they all get home soon. This is Insight. Coming up, the hostages, and sadly there have been many. We examine the psychological effects of being held.